Why, hello there! A Knife Tale here, bringing you a knife review of this WE Knives Guthrie. This is based on the Scout, I want to say, by Jason Guthrie. There's his logo right there. I think it's Jason. Jason? Jason? Yes, Jason Guthrie. He is a custom knife maker with some very interesting design language, and they almost look like they're not. It looks weird with the little hump and everything at first until you get it in hand and it makes complete sense. This is a premium knife that is very, very well made, and I'll just skip to it and say, yeah, this is recommendable, this is a good knife. But before we get into those reasonings, I will start with specs, as usual. This is, if you're technically looking to where the blade stops, 4 inches. If you're technically looking to the earliest point where the handle starts, 3.78 inches. You've got 3¼ inches of blade cutting length. This is a large knife. This is a 9¼ inch knife almost, with a 5 3/8 approximately handle. I will make our comparisons to our resident comparison knives, Civivi Elementum and Civivi Conspirator, the budget brand, or one of the budget brands, of WE. And their sibling dwarfs them. 100% dwarfs them. However, it is a very slim knife, and I particularly like that. You have tons of room, but it doesn't feel like it's too big, because it's not, ultra tall, ultra chunky. It's quite nice and feels really good in the hand. Oh, speaking of chunky, comparison to the Conspirator, it is thicker. It is thicker than the Conspirator. Decently thicker. It's also fully contoured, where the Conspirator has a lot of chamfering and rounding on the edges, but it's not fully contoured. This one is. Before I move on, how much actual handle and grip position do you have? 2 WE batteries. You have over 2.5 WE batteries. it's quite a good bit of actual handle length, and you have some place you can move around on. It's super comfortable. It'll accommodate pretty much any hand size. Hardware check. You've got a T8 pivot, T8 all around. Everything except for the thumb stud looks to be T8, including the lock bar insert. Yes, T8. Great job there, WE. I will say WE is a company that has been. They're doing some things. They're listening. They're improving in some areas, and they do seem to be listening. There are a few things that they could, particularly on the Civivi end of budget things, there they need to keep listening and improving, but that goes for most companies, which we will talk about in a moment. 4.56 ounces. Not quite an ounce an inch, but surprisingly close, and not at all heavy for this much knife. Not at all heavy for that much knife, yes. The actual handle thickness, 557 thousandths, yes. The Conspirator is around 524 thousandths, I want to say. So it is thicker. Blade stock is a nice 125-ish thousandths. And behind the edge, on this not quite full flat ground, but flat ground blade with a nice swedge on it, is, in typical WE fashion, pretty thin. 14 thousandths behind the edge, approximately. Give or take a little bit, but quite thin. WE is, one of the reasons I like WE is that they really give you a cutting geometry on a lot of their knives. Even if maybe they have a higher grind on some knives, it's still thin enough, with a thin enough blade stock, to really be used. And they typically come with pretty good edges. Not necessarily always the most aggressive, but this is not bitey, but it is definitely sharp and fine, which is very nice. It does cut quite well. This one is now part of my collection. I have used it. I have carried it. I really like this knife. Moving on from the actual specs, what are we looking at? Drop point blade, in WE fashion. Well, actually not in WE fashion. Normally, WE knives are almost completely sterile other than the tiny microscopic markings. Let's see, where is it? It is right there. CPM 20CV blade steel. Typically, they have their knives and blades almost completely sterile because their logo is on the pivot or on the pocket clip or something else. This one does have Jason Guthrie's signature on it, logo, and while I would very much like to see it up there, since it drops down there, it's on the bevel, and I'm not going to knock this one too hard. It is on the back. It is relatively attractive and not exactly taking up too much room. And if it didn't have that drop down, though, I would say just put it there or there. But, signature's a signature, right? We are, as I mentioned, the Swedge, with a nice hand satin on this particular version. There are multiple variants, as usual, with WE knives, including a polished gray and a Damasteel and all. I never suggest the Damasteel. WE's Damasteels are usually too expensive, but they are often typically almost mirror polished Damasteel. So that is one of the things I don't think a lot of people know. Their Damasteels do offer up something. The plunge grind on this knife it could definitely be better. It sort of goes down and just wraps a tiny bit around right there to basically end at the edge termination, which is too close, and it definitely is going to cause a smile. And that brings me, before we start talking about anything else, to the problem that WE does need to work on, and that's putting their stop pin behind the edge. That can really screw up knives, and that also gives you less lifespan and causes you problems with sharpening. However, that is not the case on this particular knife, despite where it hits. For two reasons. One, it hits back here where at the when the blade reaches full tang thickness in the actual tang, or full stock thickness on the actual tang of the knife. Typically, when you're cutting in a drawer, you're not touching the thickest part of the knife. You're not actually cutting into the tang. What are you crying about, dog? Hold on. Let me finish here. You typically want to go partially down the plunge grind into just before the plunge grind starts to actually extend, which you can definitely do. It might be a little bit tricky once you get up the blade. It also happens to stick lower than where the actual top contact point is. So, as long as you're a little bit careful and don't go past this point, which is where you want to actually cut in a sharpening tool in the first place, you're going to have no problems here. The sharpening tool should not present a problem there, but overall, I still think we and just about every other dang company out there need to start addressing this more, where they're not putting the dang stop pin right behind the edge. It was a problem on this Incendy because it hit here. Sharpening tool, I mean, it hit in front of the plunge grind. You have basically that much life. However, I have to say, the Incendy, I have removed the stop pin, and the actual button lock itself still provides enough stop. It does not hit anything. It does move just a tiny bit, but it sits in position just fine. So the Incendy here is fine, despite the bad placement of the the stop pin. Jeez, I couldn't remember the word for a second there. Because the stop pin can be removed here. This one, not so much, but it's not a problem on this knife, so I'm not going to knock them there. Just something that I think they should start thinking about, and most companies in general. I mean, would it be so hard to attach a stop pin to that and just have it rotate around? Probably not. The actuation method on this knife is thumb studs. They're relatively small, and they are tight, but you can get to them pretty good. It also has a front flipper that is jimped very well. Not necessarily the best type of jimping, but this one does provide traction and is executed very well. And it wraps completely around, and it's super easy. Partially due to the height and everything. I haven't actually done a tricks with this knife, you can probably do them. Yeah, you can. The knife is on bearings, if you hadn't noticed, and that is one of the biggest selling features. I mean, WE knives have typically, historically, been relatively tight. This is drop shot. This is that special sauce occasionally seen on some WE knives that recently, where it's just insanely smooth, insanely great, just wonderful, wonderful action, punching above its weight. The only thing that I can say is on the reverse flick, because the thumb studs are not super tall, it can be a little bit tricky. I have found myself slipping over it a little bit, but it's usually pretty good. So action and manipulability. Is that a word? That doesn't sound like a word. The ability to manipulate this thing is manipulatability. Overall, very, very good on this. And the blade is quite beautiful. This particular variant has this sort of, I think they call it a champagne anno. It's sort of bronzed but gray kind of anno. Very, very attractive in my opinion. I like this finish. With a carbon fiber handle scale. And it is technically, I guess you would consider this, most people would consider it a bolster lock. With some beautiful hardware with just some nice little extra touches in there. WE logo, attractive, simple, and abstract enough that it's not taking away from anything. There is no backspacer, but there are 2 stop pins and a lanyard post. Hidden. Good, 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 good. The clip is pretty minimalist, but it does have a little bit of design instead of just being a straight up forward pocket clip. A pocket clip. A popsicle stick is what I'm looking for here. I'm not doing well with words today. Good flex, good retention, continuous rise. It works pretty well. It is ultra comfortable in the hand. No complaints there. You do have some speed holes, which not everybody's a fan of speed holes. I'm particularly 50-50. It depends on how the speed holes are executed. If the speed holes are on one side of the knife only, I don't like them. And technically, this one does do that with these speed holes. There is no lower speed holes, which I don't like. I kind of wish it was just, I do admit, I wish it was just these ones. These extra ones just feel a little bit too much. However, they don't bother me, and because there are speed holes, the design element is clearly carried throughout the knife, and it doesn't bother me. So, speed holes are not something you're going to be able to avoid, though I imagine you could find someone to make scales for this thing if you really wanted to get rid of them. Probably. There are enough custom scale makers and aftermarket pieces out there that you could probably find something. It is perfectly centered. And it is no play, without lacking play. It is minus play. I don't know. Something. As I said, words, stupid, hard, me, something. Put that together. The inlays are really, 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 really well done. Almost completely unnoticeable. And the ergos. The ergos are really where this thing shines. Even though it looks a little bit strange, it not only cants the blade a little bit more forward and a little bit more out because of this sort of change in angle. It really makes for something that fits the hand and is comfortable. This is an extremely comfortable knife in pretty much every single way that you're going to use this thing. Yeah, there's nothing to complain about. And the final thing I want to talk about is the lock bar access, which is great. It sticks proud. It is textured. You can get it from the side easily. Though I will say, this one, when you disengage like this, because it's such a drop, it drops to your nail. And I don't always like that hitting my nail, so I do find myself occasionally doing this. But that's a personal preference thing. It's pretty darn great. And overall, this knife is pretty darn great. It's also at a reasonable price point for the knife that it is and what you're getting and the execution here. Honestly, this is great. And I think I've talked about everything that I really need to talk about here. So I'm going to end the review on a note that this is a very recommendable and very good knife. And I feel that you're getting pretty good bang for your buck here. Oh, see, I slipped off because they are a little bit short. I don't know if they need a little more texture or a little bit more height, but 99% of the time they do work just fine. Thumb studs, that is. So, I will thank you for watching. Thank you for considering liking and subscribing. Thank you if you do like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you saw something about this knife that you didn't know already. And I will see you guys in the next one. I have something interesting coming, and I'm looking forward to it. So, I'll see you then, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.